without you, there really wouldn't be a Republican Party, with all due respect to us men. And ladies, we are in the fight of our lives right now. And I just want to encourage you, don't slacken, don't back up, don't give in. What we're fighting for is worth everything we have to give. Now, I don't know what happened to you on November 6th when we got the news, but you know, I've been following presidential elections since Jimmy Carter. I mean, following them closely. In fact, I have to confess, Jimmy Carter was the last Democrat I voted for. I have repented. I believe I've been forgiven for that. But I have never experienced an election, the results of which caused people to weep. I mean, weep. And I have friends say, I just can't talk about it right now. The pain was so deep, the fear so great for our country, that people actually shut down. As I contemplated what happened on November 6th, because it certainly came as a shock to me, I headed up, of course, you know, I live in Chesapeake, I headed up to Richmond to be there for the victory party. And as I was going in, because I'd been down in my own district with my congressman, Randy Forbes, and had, of course, a 2-hour drive to get to Richmond, and figured I'd get there late, but that's fine. People would still be there. We'd still be having a good time. And as I was going in, there were people leaving, saying to me, "Don't bother, it's over." And I said, "Well, I'm just listening to Fox News," to Karl Rove, reassuring me that, you know, we hadn't seen the real results yet. And there were people saying, "I don't care what you heard, it's over." So I went in, and of course, it was like a funeral. Those of you who followed the Senate race, which probably all of you did, George Allen and I became very good friends during that race because I think he's a very honorable man, a decent man. Obviously, I think I was a better candidate. I wouldn't have been running, but I found him to be a very decent human being. And it really broke my heart to see him stand on that stage, because I knew it was not just the loss of an election, it was the end of a career. And folks, throughout the following days, these are the words that resonated in my heart. And they were published on December 23rd, 1776. "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from their duty to their country. But those who stand by her deserve the love and thanks of man and woman alike." And these are the words that really struck me. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily defeated. Let there be no mistake, folks. When you strip away all the political machinations, what we are dealing with is the potential rise of tyranny in our country. What we are dealing with is the slow but steady effort to rob us of our freedom. I was not planning to run for lieutenant governor, believe me. And my wife was not planning for me to run for lieutenant governor either, believe me. I tell you that. But after the outcome of the election, friends said to me, "Look, why don't you get into this lieutenant governor's race? You know, you've already got a statewide following, get into it." And I was very, very resistant. I was the last one to jump in on December 1st. But I finally jumped in because I just felt that our country, our state, desperately needs leaders who believe in what we stand for and can communicate that message. You know, those words that went out on December 23rd, as you all know, that was a very dark moment. I mean, General William Howe had run George Washington all the way down the East Coast. I mean, he was in deep trouble. It looked like the Revolutionary War might be over before it really got started. But those words inspired the nation. And by the way, I don't mind pointing out, when an atheist knows that tyranny is like hell, the rest of us ought to really be paying attention. I decided that I had to get in because I love my country. I love this Commonwealth. And when I say that, I don't say that as a throwaway. lieutenant governor to play. Because officially, it's considered a part-time position. You are there in Richmond during the session. People say, well, you know, you need experience in order to do that job. Well, I practiced law for 15 years. I ran my own business. Just talking to Will back there about the raising of the minimum wage, folks. I was running a business in 1980 when they raised the minimum wage. I had to lay 2 people off as a result of that. So when Barack Obama stands up and talks about raising the minimum wage to $9, I think to myself, this guy skipped economics 101. He really does not have a clue of what he's talking about. But, you know, I have not been in public life with elected office so that when I cut a budget, somebody else is responsible for the results of that. I've run my own law firm, run my own business, so when I had to cut the budget, I had to sit across from a person and say to them, I'm sorry, I can't keep you any longer. This stuff is not academic for me. So people say, well, you don't have the experience. I think life experience is really what we ought to be after. You know, I think Herman Cain said it quite well when people said, we need people to go to Washington and have experience. He said, everybody there has experience. How's that working out for you? But I believe what we need is a lieutenant governor who will be a champion for our values, who will go across this Commonwealth when the session is over. Folks, I'm going to go into, if you favor me to become the next lieutenant governor, I have that opportunity, I'm going to go into those black churches. I'm going to go into those Hispanic communities. I'm going to those Filipino communities, those Asian communities, those evangelical churches where a lot of people are sitting it out, and they ought to be voting, they ought to be active, and they've been sold this bill of goods. Well, that's not really our job, that's not really our role, we're just praying. And I think we ought to pray like everything depends on God, yes, but we ought to work like everything depends on us. So I'm going to be out there making sure that 4 years from now, when we come together like this, we're looking at a very different scenario. You know, right now, with this Bolling-Cuccinelli fiasco, and I'm not, you know, placing blame, I'm just saying we got a problem. I mean, you know, I'm sure you don't want to talk about it. I prefer not to talk about it either, but it's there. We don't know what Lieutenant Governor Bolling is going to do. We don't know whether he's going to run. That would be an unmitigated disaster. So whether people are angry with Ken for having run, or angry with Bolling for doing what he's doing, or angry with both, the reality is we've got a division in our party. So we've got to have leadership that can inspire us to come together. Because we've been dispirited. We're just talking about the leadership in Washington. We've got to be inspired. We've got to be uplifted. People say, you know, my competitors, God bless their hearts, say of me, well, you know, he's just a minister, which is why I asked Susan, I said, just introduce me as EW, because I'm expecting to win the nomination. And when I go across the Commonwealth to campaign, I don't want to give liberals a shot at saying, oh, he's just a minister, he's just a bishop. Sad that that's what we come to in our culture. And I'm not ashamed of who I am. But I'm more than that. And I'm more than a speech. There's multiple dimensions to my life and my experience. But folks, this is the reality. If we don't have the ability to communicate our message in an effective way to people who share our values and ought to be with us, we're going to lose this country. It's that plain and simple. And if the ability to communicate is irrelevant, then Ronald Reagan was irrelevant. My wife and I started listening to Ronald Reagan after the fiasco of Jimmy Carter. Started listening to Ronald Reagan. And seriously, one day we looked at each other and said, you know what? I think we're conservative. And we were. We agree with everything he says. We didn't know it. There are people like that out there. We've got to bring them into our camp. They've been lied to, folks. They've been lied to. And the only candidate in this race, maybe others don't feel comfortable saying it, but the only candidate in this race who is willing to get in people's face and say that's a lie, you know it's a lie, The Republican Party is not racist. Conservatives are not racist. They don't see people as mass groups, balkanized little ethnic enclaves. They see people as individuals, each one with the imprint of God on them, capable of rising to the highest place. Their gifts, their abilities, their talents will take them, and we want to see that happen for them. We want to see that for that single mother who is trying to raise those children. We want to see that for those poor families. Look, my wife grew up in the projects, Lamoken Village. We talk about it now. Say she moved from Lamoken Village 2 blocks up, moving on up, as they say. I was born and raised on 3rd Street in Chester, Pennsylvania. It was the heart of the ghetto. But I'm not here because of affirmative action or government program. In fact, I was raised in a foster home up until the age of 9.5 years old. My mother and father had broken up, and my father sort of kept control but could not take care of me, and I ended up in foster care, and it became a juvenile delinquent and a failure, complete failure in 5th grade. And my father decided he had to step in, so he took me out of the foster home, sat me down and said to me, "Now son, let me explain to you what the rules are. Every day with me can be like a day of heaven on earth, or every day I will tear your behind all to pieces. It's up to you." And by the way, tearing you behind all to pieces was legal then. Well, you know, he gave me a very easy choice. Folks, I went from being an F student in 5th grade, having conferences about whether to keep me back, to an A student in 6th grade. Went on to graduate, as you said, summa cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa Chi, Harvard Law School, served my country in the United States Marine Corps. And it wasn't because of the government. It was because of a loving father who instilled values in me. You know, sometimes I listen to these Jesse Jacksons and Al Sharptons of the world. I wonder, who raised these people? Because my father worked, I get emotional talking about it now. My father worked 33 years in Sun Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company, in the snow, in the cold, in the rain. I don't even remember him ever taking a day off because he was sick, so that his son could have a better life. And he never once said to me, "Son, you know, you won't be able to make it because you're black, and people won't like you, and the world's against you, and the government's against you, and white people are against you." He used to say to me, "Son, this is America. You can do anything you want to do. It's up to you." He said, "There will be people who will be against you for whatever reasons." He said, "That's not your problem. That's their problem." He said, "But when people see that you want to do something with your life, there will be people who will surprise you, will come alongside you and help you." And I found that to be true. I found that to be part of the greatness of this country. Even at a young age, I saw hope because I was an American. Yes, at a very young age, I used to think, man, maybe one day I'll drive a nice car. Maybe one day I'll live in a nice home. I never owned a home. My father and I, when he took me to the foster home I lived in, we never lived in a home. We lived in rented property. My wife and I bought our first home the year after I graduated from Harvard Law School. The first home I ever lived in that I owned. But part of a family that owned a home. But folks, I'm here because this is America, where if you're willing to work hard and apply yourself and believe in the fundamental decency of the people of this country, anything is possible. And that's the message that we've got to get out there. Look, I grew up in that foster home, folks, and sometimes at night I ate mayonnaise sandwiches for dinner. Sometimes biscuits and syrup. We didn't have an indoor bathroom. I used to have to I was the youngest in the foster home, I had to bring the pot down. Some of you know what I'm talking about. We had took one bath a week in a galvanized tub, and because I was the youngest, I took the last bath. You can imagine what that water was like. But look at what's possible in this country. Where is that vision going? My father raised me with a sense of pride. You have to fight him to give him food stamps or a welfare check or cheese or... He didn't want any of that. He wanted to work for what he got. That was a common ethic among all of our people.